So we have a number that is manned 24/7, and it's 844-TWB HERO.
833. Sorry, we
changed
just
it. That's
updated
right.
it, so
Yeah.
it's
Don't
833
worry. Hey, things
TWB
change. Yeah.
TWB Talk. We just updated the phone number.
So say it again.
833 TWB Talk, TALK.
Yeah.
Southern, it's
Hey everybody, it's Michael Laidler, your host of the LEO First podcast. As you can tell, we're still doing some more podcasts here in San Antonio, Texas at the FBI Leader Conference. Today's episode is going to be even more fun because if you can't tell, I'm actually going to have two guests live with me. And what you're going to see is me passing the microphone between myself and Tim Putney. I'm giving you my name, and I'm not going to edit that out, so let's just live with it. And then Jenny Hill will have her own. But as you guys can't tell, this is going to be a fun podcast. We're going to talk about things with the Wounded Blues doing and how they're impacting law enforcement at all levels, because one of the big things that we do on the LEO First podcast is we highlight ways to humanize the badge and let people know how much we value you as people. If you guys heard in the past, I did have Jenny on a couple of episodes ago, and I say a couple, it might have been like 6 months ago. I can't remember myself.
I can't remember.
But she reached out to me, and she was like, hey, let's do another one in person. I was like, this is perfect. I said, this is awesome. And then last minute was like, let's throw Tim in this thing. So we're all just kind of winging this, but we're here. And then, we always have Barron on standby. As you can't tell, he's relaxed. He's ready to do his thing, which will probably just be sitting here. But he's definitely here in a full mode. So I'm not going to go too much further because I do value their time, and I know they're traveling out today. We're going to start off with whoever wants to start first. Tell us who you are, kind of what you're doing, and just tell people what you want them to know about you.
I can go first. I'm Jenny Hill with the Wounded Blue, Executive Director now. I started out on the peer team back when we started in 2018. We assist injured and disabled officers nationally. And that means with peer support as our core, facilitating culturally competent therapists, helping officers go to recovery and rehab if need be. We've seen such an uptick this last 2 years in that, and I think it's because we're helping end the stigma surrounding mental health, where we can talk more about all the incidents, critical incidents we've been through. And one of the things that we also assist with is workers' comp, EEOC, legal, and just as many resources as we can, because all of our team are current or former law enforcement officers. And so we understand and can relate to those who've been injured in the line, and whether that's a physical injury or invisible injury, that's what we want to come in and say, you're not alone. Our motto is never forgotten, never alone.
My name is Tim Putney, and I've been with the Wounded Blues since 2021. I'm now the peer director. And help facilitate the team and keep it going and trying to run smooth, help Jenny out. I got started because I was injured in the line of duty back in 2017, forced out, and I think one of the most important parts of what the Wounded Blue does is it's not about our story. When we're assisting you, it's not about us, it's about the officer we're helping out. And you don't compare anything. And that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. I know whenever I first talked to somebody who's like, well, I wasn't shot. And then it took me forever to grasp that, okay, that doesn't matter. Like Jenny says, trauma is trauma. What may be bad to me may not be to her, same vice versa. And so that's the main thing people need to know when we're talking to them is it's not about what we've been through, it's about you and how we can help you.
Exactly. Now, one thing that I realized that you said, and you kind of continue on this, over the last 2 years, you've seen the number rise. And sometimes when you hear that, you might say, oh, that means we're having more issues. And that doesn't necessarily mean that. I like you added to that part saying that doesn't necessarily mean we're having more issues. It's just minimizing the stigma that surrounds being vulnerable. Because one thing I like to talk about is, as law enforcement officers, active, retired, even people thinking about it, we think vulnerability is a weakness. But it's just nod. It's like, hey, this is who I am. And it's like we always have this closer connection to people when they show vulnerability, but nobody really wants to do it. So it's kind of like we're going playing this cat and mouse game. Like, man, I want a leader that wants to show him or her true self, but at the same time, we don't want them to look too. Like, we don't show one. Like, it's that fine balance. So for you guys in Wounded Blue, as you've seen your numbers increase, like, how do you think that impacts the development of Wounded Blue as you guys build this amazing company?
It's a really great question.
I think it impacts. I think the biggest impact is and one thing we left out is we also do peer support for spouses.
Ooh.
And families.
Yeah, and families.
Kids.
Oh, that's different, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as awareness is raised out, you have your spouses calling the officers out as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's common in law enforcement for divorces. And if your family is important to you, which to most people it is, when the spouses start calling it out, you're like, oh crap, I got to get help. I need to fix myself. But I also think the leadership in general is starting to see, hey, we need to focus on our guys' mental health and try to keep them healthy. Everybody focuses on the tactical side. Everybody puts that to the wayside. And I just think that awareness has gotten out, and people talk about it. People just don't know how to implicate it yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you on that. I think because we've seen such an uptick, I believe it's because we're talking more about wellness. So many wellness conferences out there now. We talk about resiliency, a word I'm not a fan of because I feel like it's become so faddish. Everybody even has in their titles now, right? But it's really about being more open, because at the end of the day, our career in law enforcement is one that, I mean, you talk about not comparing, but if you compare it to, I was in banking before. I was held up in a bank robbery. That's what got me into law enforcement. But I can compare how it was to be in banking versus law enforcement. Not the same at all, right? And so us talking more, I believe, creates that awareness and of being able to say, okay, it's okay to say I need help. I mean, it took me 8.5 years. I was injured in line of duty in 2011, forced out in 2013. And from the time I came on in 2005, I had a critical incident happen 2 days into FTO. I had a guy die in my arms. And it was, I'd say, the most traumatic at that time, because you teach on it, you learn about it in the academy, but until it happens in real life, it's like, what the hell just happened? And so having to work through that, and then I had a really nice FTO who at the time said, well, maybe you're not cut out for this job, because I was in shock. I was in denial that it happened, and I went through that. Should I, would I, could I have saved him? I couldn't have saved him. He had a heart attack at the end of the day, but I didn't know that at the time. Right. And so when the FTO said to me, well, maybe you're not cut out for this job, I thought, I now love the idea of being an officer. I've been through academy. I love the academy, and being here, I don't want to quit. I don't want to be forced out. And so from that point on, I said, you know what? I'm not going to show emotion. That's a bad deal. You know, the suck it up buttercup mentality, that has to end, because we see so many things. I just testified not long ago on a Georgia PTSD bill that thankfully just passed, and this year, and I said, you know, a lot of people don't understand when you go to the critical incidents, like the death of a baby. The kid calls were always the hardest for me, and you just suppress it because now you're on a traffic stop, and then you're back on the kid wrapped around a tree, and then you're back on a traffic stop, traffic. I worked for a high-end traffic agency, but that being said, so all those critical incidents just compounded, and so, but what ended up being my silver lining was my injury. Now at the time I was really angry with how I had been treated by my own agency at the time, because I thought the Brotherhood was going to step in and take care of me. No, that did not happen. But the silver lining is I was able to, over time, start to process all those critical incidents started coming back, because here you have an injured officer, they're at home, they're on light duty or no duty status, and what's happening now, they're just sitting with their thoughts of what's going on, and that's a bad deal. And that's where leadership I have seen start to step up and say, we need to take care of our injured and our disabled officers who are going through this, and not just on the physical but the invisible side as well.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as the stigma has changed, or it's starting to change, it's not 100%
Right.
changed. We don't want to boost any of ourselves up like that, us sitting here or anybody that's into the wellness game. We definitely don't want to say that it has changed completely because it has not. However, we're starting to see a shift. Like we're starting to see, like you said, all the conferences, all the summits, all the training people are having, all the funding. The state of California last year or 2 years ago, the whole state received funding. And every agency, even if you didn't apply. But it was crazy that you see that because let's say 5 years ago, we would have all had that same suck it up buttercup mentality. Like, should I really talk about it? Well, no, because I'm going to look like the weak officer or weak deputy.
Get fired,
or get fired.
It goes
Like,
in my file of question.
Yeah. And then even, and that's the thing, even now, there is that big stigma. Like, and I was talking to one of the sheriffs earlier, and he was saying the one downside that he still sees, even in the whole mental wellness world, is that stigma. Like, let's say you go to your agency and say, I have this issue going on. Now, it's like, okay, what kind of category are you going to be put in? And then when that happens, you're just like, I don't want to be put in that. But I tell people, I'd rather be put in the category of alive or the category of death. Like, there's a difference because if you're struggling and you don't handle it, we know what happens. I mean, the suicide numbers are high. They may have lowered. I don't really think they do, but we have to find a way to start to address because we got to move the needle. But only way that happens is through awareness and actually talking about it. Because when you verbalize things, you're able to humanize it. You're able to say this is real, and you're just not suppressing it. And that suppression is what I believe, from my experience, that makes people go overboard and it takes them to that next level. So, like, for Wounded Blue, do you guys work directly with agencies, or do you guys work with agencies and individuals? Because let's say someone's like, well, I have this issue, but I don't want my agency to find out. How does that work with you guys?
I'll let him take it.
Okay.
Peer support director.
Everything is confidential. We will never talk to your agency and let them know that we are speaking with you.
Okay.
Trust is imperative in this, especially for someone that's afraid of what might happen. We also will work with the agency if they call us in and say, hey, we have a critical incident, we need your help. We will go in and we will help with debriefings. We will, if they say, hey, we have an officer that we think needs help, we'll never cold call anybody because that can send somebody down into a spiral even further, I think. But there's ways to get around that. Like, hey, give them my number, text it. Just tell them to text me. We don't have to talk. We can just text back and forth. And normally that leads to hey, can I just call you? Absolutely. So we'll work with both the officer or the agency, depending on, it's all situational, what we can do.
And we have leadership who will contact us, chiefs, deputy chiefs, and say, hey, I have a guy or a gal who really needs help. Can you help them? Absolutely, here's their number. Now, if that officer does reach out, which has happened more often than not, we talk to them, but we'll never go back to that leadership, chief, deputy chief, sheriff, whomever gave it to us and say, oh, by the way, I talked to so-and-so. If that officer chooses to go back and say, thank you for sending me to them, or however they want to connect, they can, but we will never, even if they try to follow up, we will say, you gave them our information and they know how to contact us, just because of the confidentiality. I mean, trust is so important to us. I mean, it was, I thought for sure, you never think you're going to get injured in the line of duty or an injury that may take you out. Now, I was forced out because of my injury, different situation, but I was injured in the line of duty, and I thought for sure my agency was going to have my back. It's that perspective, I guess, that we think of agencies. Yeah, they're always going to take your back if you're injured catastrophically or injured in general. And I learned very quickly that at the end of the day, it's a business and we're a number. And Tim was saying earlier, you find a balance, and what you realize is departments, agencies, organizations, you're replaceable. I'm replaceable now. You're replaceable. You're a number at the end of the day. It's really a business. But where you really need to hone in, and where we absolutely want to hone in, is your home life and your friends. For those who are single and say, I don't have kids or whatever, it's your family, your friends. They're the ones who are going to be there the job can replace you any day, and oftentimes we're defined. I speak from my own personal experience, but I never realized how defined I was by the uniform. It was like putting on a thunder vest, or just like whoo, it's just like
Yeah,
superhero,
legit,
yeah. And so I didn't know how to turn it off. I was on 24/7. Or is someone going to come by my house? Is someone going to? So you're constantly in hypervigilant mode. And so you realize there's got to be this balance. You've got to find, somebody said, I hate the word hobby. And I said, yes, I understand that. But what do you do outside of law enforcement? I don't know. I work all these EJs. Okay, well, do you run? Do you fish? Do you hunt? Do you like to go to the shooting range? Do you travel? Do that now. Don't wait till you're injured, because I found out the hard way and ended up down a really dark rabbit hole. And thankfully somebody reached out and helped me get into therapy, which I was against because I just didn't, the stigma surrounds it. But
And everybody's afraid to start the therapy. And that first time you go is the hardest. After that, it's not that bad. You're pulling up some dark things from the past, but once you get it processed, it's a lot better. I mean, and then once you start working on yourself, the second you stop, you're going to end up right back. You have to remember to keep that going and not just go to a few sessions and be like, I'm healed. So, So.
Absolutely.
So for you guys, what I have noticed, and we talked about on Sunday evening, you guys have a conference coming up. And this would be the fourth year running. So obviously not every organization that provides services like the ones you have already described on this episode does a conference or summit, whatever. How did you guys come about doing that? And how have you guys seen that impacting the people around you?
Our founder, Lieutenant Randy Sutton, who was Las Vegas Metro PD, has always had the heart just to get back out and help. And that's where we all came together in the beginning and just talked about, where do you find your purpose? Huge thing with us. In fact, that's our subtitle this year, is finding your purpose, pursuing your purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, you sort of get lost in translation. And so back 4 years ago, he said, I want to do the summit and bring in different speakers. And it was sort of a test, but we ended up having from chiefs, peer support, disabled and injured officers. I mean, you name it, the gamut. And it's just grown. We like to keep it small because the speakers like to engage with the attendees. Right. We like to engage with the attendees, but it's a little bit, I'd say our conference is a little bit different. We go to a lot of conferences and love to network and meet people and go as attendees as well. With ours, it's sort of, we try to hone in on the wellness aspects, the spiritual, the financial, the survival of the fittest on the road, for those who are still in the street.
I think it's a lot more intimate as well, as you're saying.
Absolutely.
And even though I'm part of the team, I love going because I get to, with it being small, I get to sit on every session and still be there for those that need to talk. And it's still, I mean, you really don't ever stop your healing process. And as a team member, and now the peer director, it's important for me to hear that as well, because it still helps me with my healing. I'm sure Jenny's the same way. I mean,
we even have speakers say that they get stuff out of it, which is, usually when you speak all the time. I just think you're an amazing speaker, by the way, but those who speak usually go speak and then they're out. But when the speakers stay, they say they actually get something out of it. And a lot of our speakers have connections to law enforcement or former law enforcement, retired, and some are still current. And so it's just a matter of how can we continue to help? Because one of the things I just was talking to someone earlier about this, we talk a lot about awareness. Awareness. Everything's awareness, right? Which is awesome. We need more to be aware about mental health, about suicide, because it is so prevalent.
It's real. Yeah, it's real.
We see more law enforcement suicides than we do line of duty deaths. It's something that has to be triaged. But with awareness comes the then what, and that's what we really need to start talking more about as well, is the then what. So how do you triage this? Yes, let's make everybody aware, but let's also do the then what phase. How are we going to help? What are the next steps? What are the next, beyond just saying, hey, let's talk about mental health. It exists, yes. We want to end the stigma, yes, but how do you do that? And so that's where we try to come in, step in, and help out however we can. we have resources out the gamut that we will, as soon as an officer's talking with us, it's not a, hey, great conversation, if you need anything, we're here. It's, we're walking alongside you, we're checking in on you, because we want to be sure you're okay. We've been there. We've been down those dark roads, and so.
I do agree. Just from the speak side, thank you for the compliment.
Yeah.
For all of us speakers that speaks anything about, any of us that speak about mental wellness, it's always therapeutic in a way, because you're out there releasing, and then it's always amazing to have people come up and say, you know what, that resonated with me. I just had a guy we talked about, because I talk about my raised by a single mother, and he was like, man, he said, you connected with me right there and then. So even for people that speak at the conference like yours, it's still another outlet for them to be able to share their stories and provide help at any level. Because like you said, since it's all types of people, you don't know. And maybe that person, you may think that they're a really strong audience member. They might be coming to hear a strong story so they can overcome some of the obstacles they're facing with. Because I tell people, you don't know what anybody's going through. You know what you're going through, and you got to limit it to that. You got to limit your. I said, you don't know what stressors or things that can be coming up that can be impacting somebody in a negative way. And we think we know, but if we don't, but that's why you have these summits and conferences, because you give even the speakers another outlet to share, and that in turn gives everybody else the kind of the opportunity to, like, you know what, I didn't know this happened with this person. I've been talking to them for 5 years and I didn't know. And now you're here, and then you hear it from the audience like, oh man, now I want to share this. So for you guys, obviously you guys are doing a great service to law enforcement. You're definitely improving the area. You're definitely impacting people and helping them out. So if people want to reach out to the Wounded Blue or to you as just people, what is the best way they can find you?
So we have a number that is manned 24/7, and it's 844-TWB HERO.
833. Sorry,
we
we
changed
just
it. That's all
updated
right.
it, so
Yeah.
it's 833
Don't worry. Hey, things
TWB
change. Yeah.
TWB Talk. We just updated the phone number.
So say it again.
833 TWB Talk, TALK. Southern, you know. It's
I just want to make sure. And then not the phone number, what else?
And then www.thewoundedblue.org. And then we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, most of the social media platforms. And the phone number you can text, because sometimes we don't just want to pick up the phone and call someone. I'm not really a big phone talker.
Yeah.
I do now because of my position, but oftentimes they're texters, and that's the, you know, they can engage by texting, or they can reach out via email.
Yes.
That's also on the website, or Messenger through Facebook or Instagram. So
And no matter what, somebody will get with you.
absolutely,
as soon as possible.
someone has the phone 24/7.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's a crisis hotline.
Okay.
So anyone who needs assistance, we're there.
Yes.
And if message is left, then we'll call back as well. But yeah.
Okay. Any final words?
No, anyone interested in going to the summit, I would really encourage them. This year, we tried it a little bit last year, but we're doing more a two-day session where we separate. It's for spouses and significant others, like Tim said. We also have a spousal peer support program. We also have 2 therapists on our team, a clinical director and another family and marriage therapist. So anyone who's needing immediate care, we can get them into that. It's so imperative to us. But with the summit, what we're doing is we're going to actually have a session for just the officers and the frontline workers. We have several first responders coming outside of law enforcement as well. They'll be separate in a campfire conversation, so we can talk about our stories and talk about our backgrounds and talk about things that are hard to talk about in front of our spouses. And then the spouses and significant others are actually going to have their own session with actually Tim and his wife are one of the ones who are going to share their story, and then there's a therapist as well who will come in and engage with them. And then that way they can, one, network with each other, but also realize on the spousal and significant other side, realizing they're not alone either, because it's a tough field out there. I mean, having been through one divorce myself and my husband now, he understands more, but he says it's a learning process. He's on the spousal peer support team as well, and he says it's really tough when you're, you know, married to former officer or current officer. It's just learning those ebbs and flows. So a really good way to connect is there.
And all I'd add is, whether you're a leader or an officer watching this and you need assistance, or you think somebody else needs assistance, please share our information or contact us yourself. Don't hesitate. taking that first step is the hardest step, but once you do it, it's easy from there.
Absolutely.
And those are great final words, obviously, get people to the summit, the conference, and then sharing it. Even if you don't think it's for you right now,
Right.
maybe it's for somebody else. And worst case scenario, you share it, someone throws it away, or maybe they share it with somebody else, because it's about creating more awareness. And whether it's you're talking about the frontline warrior, or you're dealing with the spouse, or you're dealing with the children,
Right.
or the mom, the sister, or whoever it might be. Everybody's part of the same system, no matter how you look at it. I know he's like, I'm stretching again. You guys are just doing too much. But regardless, it's one of those things that we look at when it comes to support. It's like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And we always use the phrase, or I've heard the phrase a lot more lately, if you see something, say something.
Yep.
And the Wounded Blue is something, if you see somebody struggling, there's
Yes.
another resource out there. And that's some of the things that
Yes.
we want to do on the LEO First podcast, say, hey, this is just another avenue, whether it's one person or a million people that watch. It's like, hey, even if that one person says, you know what, I've been thinking about something, or something's really been bothering me, now I have another resource. Or I just had this coworker that went through this traumatic call, now I have another resource. Because that's the name of the game, is having resources and be able to spread them out and not holding on to it, because even if you don't think you'll help yourself, you can and more than likely will help somebody else. And if you can do that, that's when you get that different level of like internal happiness, that you're like, what, I helped this person. And I know for you guys, and I'm going to speak to the choir on this one, I know you guys do this because you internally want to do this. Nobody's forced you to say, hey, wake up like, hey, you got to go with Wounded Blue today. No, it's something that you guys choose to do, because some still active, retired, however you might look at it, you're choosing to do this. There's all types of jobs. You can be working, there's a FedEx in this building, but you could be working at FedEx if you really want to, but your passion is in driving people. So folks, when you're looking for a resource, and you look for two people that love what they do, you have them sitting right here. You have Tim Putney, not Mike Putney. That was me. That was all on me. I got excited. And you have Jenny Hill. So you have two people at Wounded Blue
and you have Baron.
And you have
This is
Baron. Yeah.
the
And
peer
Baron,
support service dog.
Baron will show up. Trust me. My son, if I'm going to show him this episode, I'm going to say, hey, look who we brought. He's going to be like, really? First you showed me a photo of them, and now you're going on the podcast? Like, he's going to be completely disappointed in all this. So it's definitely something that we want you guys to know, that you have at least 4 entities that can definitely help you out and bring this life to you. So guys, thank you for watching. Make sure you reach out. Make sure if you don't have it, and they're not, I don't know if they have any more tickets left, but make sure you try to get a ticket to this conference, because we know we need it always. And if you're on the fence about going, just go. You know what? You never know what you're going to learn. And you might be able to meet these people and be able to just elevate your life, and then be able to take that back to your agency, your family, or just for yourself. So once again, thank you guys for being on. I appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is
Thank you for
amazing.
doing it
Yes.
again.
Yes. Oh yeah. No, I don't mind. You know me. Hey, I'm all about. Hey, sometimes I edit things. Sometimes, hey, let's just do it again. But this is fun, y'all. I always tell you guys, I do this because I enjoy it. I enjoy bringing real people on that have law enforcement experience and talking to law enforcement, or people, even spouses and family. People are like, oh man, my wife watched your episode and loved it. Okay, whatever that might be, because we have to share. And I've even heard people say, oh, there's a lot of LEO podcasts, and I'm like, no, they're not. There's not as many as you think. I said, that's like saying there's too many leadership podcasts. There's one probably forming every day. It's like, exactly. It's like, no, there's always something, or there's too many news outlets. No, there's never enough of any of those. So once again, thank you guys. We appreciate you watching. Once again, subscribe if you haven't yet, and make sure you get something. If not, share something. Thank you guys. Y'all have a great day.